Welcome back to the Spewak Training podcast. We are very excited to take on this next episode with Jill Finklang and Carter Jensen. Jill's been a coach with us for several years, and she's currently on what we call a sabbatical in Florida, and we're very happy for her getting a much-needed break after many successful runs with several of her folks. And Carter's been with the group for several years now and started working with Jill, and it's just been I would just say a match made in heaven. Seeing their success together has been absolutely incredible. And I'm really excited to share this episode with you because you're really going to have the opportunity to listen to their story, kind of hear about Carter's journey with the running piece, but also be able to just see the authenticity of their relationship and how genuine it is. And just shows the power of what coaching, can do for you. The athlete-coach relationship is very special to us at Spewak Training. I know we talk about that a lot, but I think their story really is one that's going to resonate. And also just in a world where AI is taking over everything, we obviously, are huge proponents of that human connection. And I would say that, Carter and Jill have both really been able to succeed, not just in their running and the coaching, but everything else because of their relationship. So it's so special. We're looking forward to diving into this interview. Let's get going. Welcome back to the Spewak Training Podcast. This is an episode I've been looking forward to for a very long time. We get the opportunity to interview Coach Jill Finklang and Carter Jensen. And I'm really excited about this because Jill, while she professionally speaks through a camera every single day, and she did note that she has been recorded doing that, she's never been on a podcast before. And I think, Carter, is this your first time on a podcast as well?
First time.
It's a little disappointing to think both of you haven't been on a podcast yet because you have such an amazing story to share, and I'm looking forward to joining you both. Jill is joining us from sunny Florida. How are you doing today, Jill?
Doing great, Mark. Thank you so much.
Love it. And Carter, you're doing well, hanging in there?
Very well, very well. Just enjoying the St. Louis spring.
It's been a whirlwind. We were 60 degrees this morning, and I think we're headed to the teens tonight. So, just another classic March in St. Louis. But, one of the things, that I really thought about going into this interview was I really wanted to make sure that we shared your story, and I did it correctly without talking too much. I want to really put the emphasis and focus on both of you because it's just really cool to see how far both of you have come, together in this journey and what you both have been able to achieve together. And this is why we started this podcast, really to be able to share the beautiful stories of the athlete-coach relationship at Spewak Training. But first, I'm going to put you kind of both on the spot here. So, obviously you guys started working together several years ago, and it was, Carter really kind of started, running from ground up when he joined the racing team, and then obviously built that and found a coach from there. But remind me, for both of you, was it 2023 that you officially started coaching with us, Carter?
Yeah. It would have been July, August of 2023. That's
amazing. And Jill, obviously, she, had been working with several people, in these last several years with us, a wide variety of abilities and things like that. But you definitely were a fun, unique challenge because you were coming out of law school. You had motivational, aspirations in the sport of running, which is just incredible for somebody that's dealing with the rigorous schedule of law school. And, that kind of leads us into you found a reason to obviously start running with us, but why hire a coach? Why, go to that next step?
I think it more so came from a place of, I'd had a little bit of a track background in high school. So, there was that element of, I'd seen the value in kind of having that second set of eyes looking on you. But in this circumstance, I think just because there's such a fine line between overdoing it. And I know myself well enough personality wise to kind of not only guide me through the process. So I know that I'm, actually getting the stimulus that I need, but also just having that, honest feedback of hey, you're doing way too much. And, we're not trying to kill a workout or blow it out of the water, right? We're doing this for a reason. So, having that second set of eyes, as I said, to kind of bring it back as well. I think that was the big one. And also just, I'd enjoyed it so much since I started that, I think having that person to help me progress in it is really, and keep the bigger picture in mind and see the forest through the trees a little bit. That was kind of what I was looking for.
And, obviously, you were motivated to hire a coach and you saw the value of yours, but then you got to choose, working with Jill. Can you talk a little bit about that process of how you realized that Jill was going to be your match? Because now in hindsight, we know it was the perfect match for both of you. But it's hard when you're going into a coaching situation. You don't necessarily know, what you don't know. So we'd just love to hear about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, just being on the racing team, you obviously like become good friends with people. I'd been friends with a couple of people that Jill had coached previously and still is coaching. So I think it's, a lot of it's word of mouth. A lot of it's just, she's got a fantastic reputation, so that makes it easy. But I'd also had the opportunity to kind of meet Jill more through the team as I'd started, attending more. And I mean, like if I were to put it down to equality, I think the big thing is just honesty. I knew that there wasn't going to be room for, she wasn't going to steer me wrong just because it's maybe what I wanted to hear. So that, I think it's a huge credit to Jill. I think she takes that in her work. So I think it's that was the big thing. I just wanted someone who was honest and it'd give it to me straight, and Jill's that person. So I think she made it easy in a lot of ways.
Yeah, Jill often, when I'm talking to her on the phone, she's telling me that she's making circles, and this is actually on video, so you'll get to see this. We actually get to see this time. But she can kind of see our dreams in front of us. That's something I really admire about Jill. She's always able to, she's such a forward thinker, but she thinks about the whole picture, when it comes to coaching. Jill, can you expand a little bit more about that philosophy and especially how that applied to working with Carter?
Sure. First of all, though, Carter is just truly a gem. And if you don't know Carter, you need to get to know Carter. And when he approached me, for coaching, I was just so honored. But Carter really came to me with everything that he was going to need to be successful. He was committed. Carter, you're very humble. You were willing to do all the work. You trusted the process. You trusted me. You were always an advocate for yourself. You found joy in running. You're an amazing teammate, but you just wanted to be your very best, and the very best version of yourself as a runner. And at the time, Carter, you got married. And I don't know if you remember, but I said, we're not starting coaching until after the wedding. That's why we started July 2023. And you were also in law school. So you had two very large, pivotal life experiences that were going on. But I always promised Carter we could do it all. And we did. So I think just the component then was so key for us, Carter, is that we were just so open with our communication, right? Like you said, the honesty part, we were smart, we found the balance. And while running can be such a stress relief for us, it can also just be one more stressor. And so when you went through things like taking the bar exam, right, we didn't need to run that week. We really just always kept that bigger picture. Mark always sees me doing the bigger picture. And running just doesn't always have to be our number one priority. I know we want it to be, but there's just times in life it does not need to be. But, anything we're doing right. And I think Carter, we just did an amazing job then of pushing things to the limit without going over the edge. And it was just so magical.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And I think, that's the thing that, we kind of think about, especially, really when it comes to Jill and the way that she coaches, is that, and let me just preface this. Jill is one of the most competitive people that I know, especially when it comes to the sport of running. So it's not that this philosophy is that Jill doesn't care about, running a lot or getting better, things like that. It's just that with her experience of years and years of running and now coaching, she understands the value of, if you don't take care of yourself, you can't achieve those things, and I think there's some perspective, right, in the fact that when you do this for such a long time and you have so much success as Jill's had as a runner, you just realize that those things are great, but to do this for many, many years down the road, you're not just going to always be motivated by time and by PRs and things like that. You're going to be motivated by the experience of running. And that leads me to something that what really makes this relationship so special, because, Carter now, years in doing all the training, now has the opportunity to go run a marathon, and he has a coach who is the expert in marathons, and probably beyond her expertise in marathons, probably the biggest ambassador for marathons that is out there. When you think about somebody, I always laugh because it's like anybody that says they're doing a marathon, Jill just perks up. She's like, "Oh my God, you're doing a marathon? Oh, tell me everything." And so, Carter, you had the opportunity to go run the Houston Marathon. Can you share a little bit more about that experience?
Oh my gosh. So yeah, I think kind of starting at the start of it is pretty important, because and Jill might remember this, but like for a while I took a lot of pride in like, I'm probably never going to run a marathon. Like that was something I just been really hung up on like, I want to run 5Ks, 10Ks, miles, I just want to be super quick. And I'd had a pretty good cycle off of Indy. So like coming into that January, Jill and I just we're getting lunch out in Frontenac and just kind of planning the year ahead. And I thought like, maybe it'll be, another year of 5K, 10Ks, I don't know, maybe a half. And Jill puts out the idea of Houston, more specifically a marathon, but then starts thinking like Houston would be really cool. Like it's in January, all that kind of stuff. And I think it was almost like I almost treated it like a bet, in the sense like I felt it was a bit of like I thought it was a bit of a challenge, and I thought it'd be really fun to like increase volume. This would be a way to let Jill let me increase volume. So as far as we might talk about the training later, but as far as the race itself, it was incredible. I absolutely loved it. I think it's one of those things where the first 20, like it is for many people, it felt super great, and then 21 comes down like a ton of bricks, and it's awesome in the best way, because you're I peaked for my long runs at 22, and so there's this like element of mystery past 22 of where like I have zero idea what's going to happen. So it was the hardest thing I'd ever done, and it was fantastic. I got to run with one of my good buddies, Colin, for the first 10. There were several teammates who had gone down that just made the weekend. Krista, one of my other really great friends on the team, she ran it. Timo, it couldn't have gone better. It's one of those events, right, where with a 5K, 10K, at some point you just go and you just leave logistics behind, and you're just worried about putting one foot in front of the other. Here it's like you're trying to really work out, okay, I have a lack of experience. Let's try to make up for those deficits in some areas. In my instance, it was hydration, for sure. But it's great because next time I know exactly what I want to work on, and just get fitter for the next one. So, I don't know when it'll be. I've kind of got some general ideas, but as far as Houston as a race, it was incredible. I couldn't speak about it more highly.
Yeah, it was such an amazing weekend because, you were able to experience it with the team, especially for your first marathon, to have all those people around you. And your coach also did the marathon too, which was really cool. Not a lot of times can you say that you're running in the same race as your coach, and I think that's something that's really special and beyond even thinking about what the race finish time was, which was fantastic. He ran a 3:04 marathon and, ran such a smart race in terms of getting faster as the race went on. It was really cool, just to think about the memories of that weekend. Jill, can you just expand a little bit more on his marathon success?
Well, Carter's success in the marathon was really no surprise. Carter, you succeed at everything you do, in life, but marathons are really hard. Anything can happen in a marathon. I've run 37 of them. As Mark said, I love marathons. But Carter, I will never forget when we met and you committed to wanting to run a marathon. But we did it so smart, Marv. We planned for this marathon with a year in advance. Yeah, we were very thoughtful. We were very deliberate. The training, the race we selected, the timing of it, and just week after week. Then once we got into the marathon training block, Carter, you trained like you were going to run the marathon. So it was really no surprise then on race day because, you were executing brilliantly during training. And I think as happy as I was that you did so well in the marathon, I was just so thrilled. We chose the Indy half to use as a training run, and it was perfect temperature. Okay. So Carter could have just aborted our plan to use that as a training run. We use it as the bigger picture was Houston. But Carter could have just come back later and said, Jill, it was perfect. I just had to go for it. And Carter, you would have had a PR in the half, right? But you didn't. You were disciplined and you stuck to the plan, having the bigger picture in mind of Houston. And your body just responded so beautifully to training. And I think we can all have big dreams of wanting to run fast marathons, but we don't know how our body's going to respond, right? And so all of that can be for naught. But Carter, you just trusted me with that training. You had no idea what was coming week after week. But when you just show up, you put your head down and you're humble and, you just delivered what was on that training plan. And ironically, I think when we picked Houston, we said, we don't have to train through a hot St. Louis summer. We're going to have a perfect fall. And we had a pretty brutal early winter, horrific wind every single training run, But, and Carter, you just did just amazing. And so was I surprised when you had just a spectacular marathon? No, because you showed up on that, towing that race line, and just had to deliver everything like you had done the previous 16 weeks.
Carter, if you think about, just where you were a few years ago prior to working with Jill and prior to having structured training, could you have ever imagined, what you've obviously achieved, but then also the relationship that's come out of working with Jill?
No. And I mean, it's so different as well, right? Like, I mean, you'd done college sports as far as, cross country and stuff. I think I'd gotten so used to the dynamic being really different. You're a part of a team where kind of winning's everything. And at some point, I think the personal aspect can get lost. There are certainly instances where that isn't the case. But I think in this instance, there is a real stark advantage to having that personal side to it. So for example, Jill went to my law school graduation. She'd met my mom and, we'd had dinner and all that kind of stuff. I think it's things like that go that extra mile where it goes beyond kind of a Sunday email. It goes beyond a Thursday email, a workout, all that kind of stuff. It's because, she could think about me as the runner and that's totally fine. But there's such an advantage in thinking more globally as well, as far as like, well, he's a runner and he's a person. Here's all the things that are coming to the table that are influencing training in this, that, or the other way. So yeah, I mean, I couldn't speak more highly about how she's really invested in that side of it. Cause I think it just made training easier. Like, cause I knew there wasn't an aspect of trying to like, run me into the ground or anything. There's a purpose behind all of it. And she's looking forward to me 16 weeks from now with all those other factors on the table. So yeah.
Anything worth doing is worth doing right, as Jill always says. She even said it on this call so far. I mean, her standard of excellence and part of that comes with just being able to teach somebody how to be patient. And for you, I know you were very motivated and ready to do everything. And Jill is also sitting here years in advance of many more marathons and many more experience, with being able to balance the sport and being able to balance the social life, the personal life, the work life, all the rest of those things. And in a lot of ways, you guys probably came into each other's life at the perfect time, because you were developing your career, transitioning from school to a job, and you really need somebody to understand, what those stresses are for you. And I think Jill obviously, is the perfect person for that and understood it to the fullest. And Jill, I'm kind of putting you on the spot with this question because I didn't put this in our notes, but would you have any specific advice for Carter as he moves forward in his running and everything else?
It's so easy. Carter and I talked a little bit about this yesterday when Carter ran a 10K and won the entire race. And just spectacular, Carter, because, you just continue to build and build. And I remember it is like Mark, you said, the patience, right? I remember, Carter, when we started and I said, hey, your 5K time, that's soon going to be your 10K time. And people are like, you got to be kidding me. Right. And you did it. But what I just, truly believe in, and I know Carter does as well, is running is just truly a gift. And we shouldn't take it for granted. I mean, every single day we get to lace up our running shoes and go run. Oh my gosh, what a blessing, that is. And so really that attitude of gratitude, Carter had since day one. And, as somebody that's been running for over 20 years, where I wanted Carter to have success today and tomorrow, it's really that bigger picture, right? Having longevity in the sport, if that's what you choose to do. So we love races, but Carter and I always say, it's the training we can't live without. It's the training that every morning just sets, the tone for such an amazing, day ahead. So it's all just a blessing. And I think just never, ever, ever take it for granted.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's, I think there were two things in that. I think in a lot of ways when Jill and I met, like you said, I was going into my career. And I think as well in a career I didn't see. If you had asked me at 18, I wouldn't have said that I was going into this career. It wasn't a thing that really crossed my mind. But I think going into the more corporate side of the US and I think in a lot of ways we have a kind of similar personality. I think it presents differently, but in a lot of ways, Jill and I are kind of those people that, we're very okay with putting everything into a whole bunch of different things. So that, it can make it hard in some ways, but I think it's so great to have someone there who gets that and understands the place that I'm coming from, where when I'm running, like, that's my happy place. That's my happy time. I want to put everything I can and all of myself into this thing. But I also want to do really well at work and move forward in that way. But as well as that, I think like the gratitude aspect of it is so cool because I'd grown up playing kind of any sport I could to get out of class, but in all the sports I'd played were very like high impact as far as whether it be rugby, basketball, football, field hockey, whatever. But in this one, so many of your runs are easy, and it's just so easy, in my opinion, to be grateful because, before 7, I've had, an hour and a half with some of my best friends in the world. And it's so fantastic to think like right now I'm at an age where I'm really keen to chase fast times and just be as good and as competitive as I can possibly be. But it's something that, when I'm 60 or 70, I'm going to have a freaking awesome time training for races to run them with my friends and stuff like that. And that's, it's just one of the best and most unique parts about our sport, I think, that you just don't get in other sports because you're so centered on doing an action, right? Where here, to run easy, let's chat and just keep this thing truly easy. So yeah, it's fantastic just to share such a lovely and special thing with so many of your best friends.
No, I think it's amazing to see how far you've come, and to be able to see, somebody that, obviously was a background of several different sports. I mean, you're probably one of the most athletic people that I know. When, you have the experience of playing pretty much everything, probably besides, NASCAR and fly fishing. But you've done it all, and then obviously be able to translate that spirit, that work ethic into the sport of running, and to have the community and the sense of purpose each day. And I think that's where it can be tough, because I think a lot of people, we want to be super successful, we want these goals, but we also have to understand that you have to be around for a while in this sport to accomplish them. And the only way to stay around for it is to be healthy. And that's not just from a physical aspect, that's from a mental aspect. We've seen a lot of people who've poured everything they can into the sport all hours of the day as adults, but neglect the stress part. And that affects, the fact that, a year or 2 years down the road, they're not able to recover the same way. And they're not able to really achieve the goals anymore because of not being able to balance things. And I think that's something that's so special with Jill. And sometimes when we first, start, a new philosophy like that, where Jill is trying to help you see the future while you're also really motivated for the present, it can be tough, and so kudos to you for being patient in the process, and trusting her, and kudos to Jill for trusting Carter. It's a two-way street. That's what's so special about it. So thank you to you both. I've loved just hearing the story. We'll have to come back and do another round at some point as well. Jill is currently on a sabbatical in Florida. We've sent her away to enjoy the sunshine, and to relax and celebrate all the success that she's had as a Spewak training coach. We're extremely grateful for her. She has been such a big asset to our community over the years. And I always say this to Jill. It's like, I was like, spend as much time away from us as you need, because we're all, we've been asking of you every single day. It was almost like bought time, that we had with Jill, because she is so special to us. So, and Carter has been, obviously such a big pillar of our community as well. So thanks for investing in us, and I can't wait to see the next chapter for you both.
No, very much appreciate the time.
All right, so if they want to find you after this episode, Carter, how could one follow your journey?
Oh gosh, I guess Strava would probably be the easiest. Hey, so yeah, just Carter Jensen, CarterJensen. And if you're really keen, I guess you can follow me on Instagram as well. And my one is just Carter Jensen 44, no spaces.
And Jill's taking a little bit of a break from social media after selling a lot of Taylor Swift tickets, but she is on Strava, right?
Yeah, you can find me on Strava, Jill Finklang.
And we also have her bio on our website and her email, so feel free to check her out there. Thank you both. Well, that was an awesome episode with Jill and Carter. It was just so cool to be able to see them take some time together to talk about their success these last several years. And I was blown away by, just the kind words that both of them had for each other. It's just so special. And, for me, like as we grew the coaching business, it's so important for me to be able to bring on coaches to our staff that I felt like, could do the job, but also be better than me in a lot of different ways. And that's what's so special about what Jill's been able to do with her athletes and specifically with Carter. And I think that just really showed in just her ability to be able to connect with him and teach him, and also be able to really talk about the balance of life and running outside of just the hours of 6 to 7 a.m., how you can manage your expectations and everything else that's going on, while also being happy with your career and your spouse and all the rest of those things. So kudos to both of them. This was such a fantastic episode, and we're really excited to just keep bringing on more content. We have a couple races coming up that if you're interested in knowing more about, the Dogwood Run here on May 23rd, benefiting the Ollie Hinkle Heart Foundation, as well as the Market Mile on Sunday, August 9th, that benefits several different local organizations in St. Louis. So we have a lot going on at Spewak Training. We're going to continue to interview more of our clients and our coaches, and produce just really fun interviews for you guys to listen to. As always, we would really appreciate it if you could review the podcast, share it with anybody that you feel would resonate and be inspired by our stories. And thank you so much just for listening and for supporting our mission.